We have number 3 Michigan, 4.5-point road favorites at number 10 Penn State. This game carries an over-under of 46 points. It kicks off at noon Eastern, such a shame, on Fox. If you're playing this game in Happy Valley, man, 7:30 whiteout. That's what, if you need a pump up for any reason, go to YouTube, find when the Penn State whiteout crowd forced a timeout on the opening play with Shea Patterson and Michigan.
That's right.
I
forgot about that.
Unbelievable. Oh my God. I put my AirPods in, I put the noise cancel, I cranked that thing up as loud as it'll go. It's chills inducing. Yeah, it's a shame that's it.
Opening play. Like literally you come
Yes.
off, kick off, you're walking out there. Yeah, timeout real quick. I don't know. I'm confused what we're doing. Play one. Yes, I forgot about that, Brett. Thank you.
And Beaver State, the 100,000 plus that are going to be jammed into Beaver Stadium, they're still going to be incredibly loud. Like, noon doesn't matter. These folks will show up at 3:30 in the morning tailgating to get ready for this, especially with Michigan in town. Now, the over took some movement on Tuesday, bumped it up from 44.5 to 46. Not super significant, but not insignificant by any stretch. Penn State has an opportunity here at home, which I'm glad they're at home for this, to make the Big Ten East race just downright hilarious. Beat Michigan, and then you hope Michigan beats Ohio State. I don't know who would win in that case. We'd have to go to some really obscure tiebreakers, but it's those 3 teams that are left, and because Ohio State has the tiebreaker over Penn State, Nittany Lions are definitely on the outside looking into Indianapolis. Michigan, they have knocked some really dominant victories in this series. If you just scoreboard look, it's not as impressive, but this has not been a super tightly contested series over the past several years. Last year, it was that second half where they absolutely buried Penn State. That was one of the more dominant halves of football all year. And that includes Georgia's national championship game over TCU. It's right up there with it. Michigan has this is crazy. And it keeps getting crazier because we're in week 11. Michigan has yet to defend a first and goal on the season. They've 0 plays run inside their 10-yard line. All 6 touchdowns they've given up have been 20 yards or more. So we don't really have a blueprint on how to beat this Michigan team or even be successful, aside from, score 55 points and hope that they turn it over enough time to lose. And I'm just looking at the TCU College Football Playoff game from last year. That's really the only thing that we've seen beat this Michigan team. Right off the bat, even at home, I don't think Penn State has the makeup on offense or defense to win this game. I just don't. Ohio State found moderate success running the ball on them. Michigan can too. Drew Aller took some deep shots on Maryland, but he went just 1 for 6 on passes that traveled 20 or more yards down the field. I don't think that they have the fast pace or strong enough offense to score points. Again, even at home, I know big bump for Beaver Stadium. I gave them the full 3.5, but I just don't see it. J.J. McCarthy, on the other side, no sugarcoating it. It was kind of a joke for a while, but man, he's been downright excellent. Even opponent adjusted, even though they haven't really played anybody. Moves well in the pocket, has a really, really good feel for pressure. Great reads. He's only 5 turnover-worthy throws this season versus 19 big-time throws according to PFF. He's second in passer rating, 4th in adjusted completion rate. Again, you can look at the defenses he's playing. They're cannon fodder. They're not great, but you can still see the way that he progresses through reads, the timing, the footwork. If you're into that kind of stuff, he's got it all. He's been playing out of his mind lately. For Penn State, I would be watching the status of Chop Robinson. He left the Ohio State game with an injury, has not played since. He is hopeful to return. He is a difference maker on defense.
He absolutely is a difference maker on defense, Brett, for a defense that I have the power ranking of number 1 in the entire country. Brett, I've had this game circled since August or before, if we're being honest. I know I'm not the only one. People listening to this, watching this, they're in the same boat. Even if you're not a Big Ten fan or a fan of these teams, just like I'm not a fan of Alabama or LSU, you circle the Alabama-LSU game. You just do. This game has a watchability score, Brett, of 9.9. That is on a scale of 0 to 10. It is dang near impossible to get any better because 10 is a theoretical limit. Somebody asked me, how do you get a 10? You don't. You can't. It's impossible. You cannot score a 10. It's a 9.9. Brett, it's the number 2 game of the entire regular season by my numbers, behind only Ohio State and Michigan, which we're going to get here in 2 weeks. I have Michigan actually, Brett, -1 in this game with a 53% win expectancy. So I'm a little bit higher on Penn State or lower on Michigan, probably a combination of the two than Vegas is in this one. I do think if this game was at night, you would see, as you mentioned, that line of Michigan minus 4.5 be a little bit lower, be a little bit closer to a pick'em. Just the timing of the game. My numbers aren't accounting for that. I know Vegas certainly does, as they should. But I do think Michigan should be counting their lucky Big 12 or Big 10 Fox, big noon kickoff on Fox stars here, because if this game was at night in the whiteout, it would be a whole different story. The fans are still going to be pumped, as you said. You said they might wake up at 3:30. Brett, they might not go to bed. Like, they might they might power nap on Friday afternoon and say, let's do this thing. We're waking up at 11 o'clock Friday night, and we're just rolling straight through for 12 hours to pregame. So, Michigan's number one in my power ratings, and this is 3 straight weeks that they've been there. It's fair to question the difficulty of Michigan's schedule. Like, it absolutely is. Objectively, you can do that. But the Wolverines are number one in my relative scoring margin. They're outscoring their opponents by 15.3 points per game more than would be expected of the average top 25 FBS team. So what that's doing is saying, okay, let's look at your opponents and how are you playing against them? How bad are you beating them relative to what would be expected? So it's a way of normalizing the opponent difficulty. So even though Michigan's not playing difficult opponents, they are beating them by a bigger margin than the average top 25 FBS team would be expected to. And they're doing it at a higher rate than any other team in the country against their schedule relative to what would be expected of the average top 25 team against that schedule. So when you normalize it, Michigan's still coming out as like this dominant team. And that's the reason that they're number one in the power ratings for me and for many others. I mentioned this already, Brett. The Wolverines have the nation's number one defense. They have the number 5 offense by my numbers. This is a strong, balanced team. I am very excited to see how they handle their first big test of the season, because they just haven't been tested yet. It's not necessarily their fault. I know the non-conference they control. Fine. This is a big test. They're going to a tough environment. We're going to see what this Michigan team's all about in this game. Penn State has been in the top 5 of my power ratings every single week since week 5. The defense has been in the top 5 the entire season. They're currently number 4. The big question, Brett, for me continues to be, can Drew Aller and the number 22 offense score enough points to win? The only other game this season in which Penn State didn't have a big talent advantage on the field was on the road at Ohio State. Penn State could only muster 1 touchdown. That came late in the fourth quarter. This game's in Happy Valley, so that is a big deal. We've talked about it a couple times already. That's a big deal for the Nittany Lions' chances here. But ultimately, even though I'm saying it's Michigan minus 1, the model needs to see Penn State and that offense do it before it really believes that the Nittany Lions can win this big one. You look at James Franklin's record against everybody, and then you look at his record against Ohio State and Michigan. I said it before the Penn State-Ohio State game. At some point, he's going to start getting these wins, and it's going to flip like it did for Jim Harbaugh against Ohio State just a couple years ago, and it hasn't flipped back. When is it going to flip? It didn't happen against Ohio State. Is it going to happen in this one? We'll see. Bottom line, I have Michigan minus 1. It's a 47% chance that Penn State throws that wrench in the Big Ten East race. Brett, Ohio State's been my favorite by the model's percentages. Ohio State's been the favorite to win the East all year. It started because Ohio State was the best power-rated team out of the group. At various points this season, Penn State and Michigan now have both been above Ohio State. But because of when those changes happened and when Ohio State already has the head-to-head advantage over Penn State, we haven't seen the favorite flip. If Michigan beats Penn State this week, Michigan will be the model's favorite to win the East going into Week 12 and then presumably going into Week 13 in the game as well.
Look, I'm not a model-based bettor. That's why I have you on here, because you have a model that's proven. That's where we get your numbers from. The reason I couldn't be just a model-based bettor is because when it prints out Michigan minus 1, I have to take the situation into account. And if I can't take, I'm a situation and information bettor. I trust my eyes. I've worked in football recruiting. I trust my eyes. I trust what I see. There's no reality in which I'm betting James Franklin big spots like these. None. You say that there will be a time that it turns around and Harbaugh's, dude, I don't know. I really don't think so. He's perpetually awful against Michigan, Ohio State. I don't think this is the game in which he turns it around and figures it out. This is Michigan with the points for me. I laid it. I would lay it up to 6. The other way that you can attack this is because we're in that ambiguous 4.5. I feel like we get one of these every week. It's when the model, the odds makers don't really know what to do with it. And they're like, here, we'll let the market figure it out. And then the market's looking at it, well, it's a dead number. I'm not going to take it. This is an opportunity for you to decide, is this number going to close closer to 6 or is it going to close closer to 3? If you think it's going to close closer to 3, bet Penn State now. If you think it's going to close closer to 6, take Michigan. I happen to think it's going to close closer to a touchdown, so I took Michigan. There's few times in which I feel really confident about big games like this. I like to use an information edge and attack games that don't have as many eyeballs on them. This one, you're probably not going to have the numbers edge against the market, but I feel pretty darn good about it because I don't have a lot of confidence in Penn State against the top of the league right now. So, and just to throw this out there, I don't think Harbaugh's going to be suspended or disciplined or anything right now. Michigan threatened a lawsuit. I just don't see this happening this year. So if you're really worried about that being a distraction, I don't think so. If anything, it's giving Michigan more fuel to go out there and kick everyone's ass on the way out before they get something going. So Michigan with the points for me in what I think to be the biggest game of the week.
Two things, Brett. I realize as I'm sitting here reviewing what I just said, you were talking about the injury status of Chop Robinson, and then I proceeded to make a comment about the Michigan defense. Of course, he's playing on the Penn State defense that I have number 4 in the entire country. So clarify that one. Yes, I do know Chop Robinson and where he's playing on which side of the field here, for which team I should say. The other one, Brett, and I realize we can't, it'll be really hard and we'll forget because it'll be years down the line probably. I just think, and you're saying I don't think this is the game that James Franklin gets over the hump and flips the script. That's fair. And maybe it's not. I mean, Vegas is saying it's not. My numbers are saying it's not. I think he's just too good of a coach for it to not happen at any point. And sometimes coaches don't. Really good coaches just don't get over that hump and they don't end up winning the games against the biggest teams that they play. I think a couple things are going to happen, though. You know, Penn State, with the doing away of divisions in the Big Ten, Penn State's not going to have to play Ohio State and Michigan every single year. So I think if we can get if Penn State can find themselves in a situation where they're not playing both of those teams every single year, and they can put themselves maybe in a Big Ten championship game that's at a neutral site where both teams have had, equal time to prepare and all these different things, that could be a chance for him to get over that hump at a neutral site in a game where a lot's on the line. There's also I just feel like he's too good of a coach and he recruits at a high level. I know he's had some concerns about how Penn State's set up with NIL and all those different things, but they've seemingly taken care of some of the things that he's needed and wanted. He's still there and he seems relatively happy. So I think he's just too good. And again, we won't know that for many years maybe. And the receipts will be gone by then, but that's my own gut feel about it. You say you take information based in that. My gut feel just tells me he's too good to stay down forever against these teams.
We could have an hour-long podcast about James Franklin.